Charles Miller stood outside what was supposed to be his bar, staring at a heavy padlock on the metal gate and a handwritten sign in Thai that he couldn't read. It was 7 in the morning, and Soi Buakau was still quiet, the neon signs from the previous night's revelry now dark and lifeless. Chuck had driven here in the Toyota pickup truck he'd bought 8 months ago, the truck that was registered in Nacha's name because, as she'd explained with tears in her eyes, it would be easier for insurance. Now that truck, along with everything else he'd poured his life savings into, belonged to a woman whose phone number no longer worked. He'd tried calling her 17 times since waking up alone in their rented house, each call going straight to a message in Thai he couldn't understand. The bar, Chuck's Place, as he'd named it with proud letters painted above the entrance, had been his dream. A clean, friendly establishment where expats could gather, where ICE could finally leave the nightlife behind, where they could build something together. He'd invested $212,000 into this place. The lease, the renovations, the furniture, the liquor license, the sound system, everything. All in her name because foreigners couldn't own bars in Thailand. She'd promised him they were partners. She'd promised him forever. Now, standing in the empty street with the morning heat already building and sweat soaking through his shirt, Charles Miller understood with devastating clarity that the 27-year-old woman who called him My Heart and introduced him to her family and cried when he talked about his late wife had been playing a role from the very first drink she'd served him, and he'd paid for every single performance. Charles Miller had always been a practical man. For 36 years, he'd run a successful plumbing contracting business in Cleveland, Ohio. Miller and Sons Plumbing, though there were no sons to inherit it. Chuck and his wife Barbara had tried for years to have children, enduring the heartbreak of 3 miscarriages before finally accepting it wasn't meant to be. They'd built a different kind of life, instead a comfortable suburban existence with a paid-off house, regular vacations to Florida, and the quiet satisfaction of hard work rewarded. Barbara had been Chuck's high school sweetheart. They'd married young, at 22, and spent 42 years together. She was his best friend, his business partner in the early days when money was tight, his companion through every success and failure. When she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at 63, Chuck felt his world tilt on its axis. The disease moved fast, 6 months from diagnosis to death. Chuck held her hand through every doctor's appointment, every chemotherapy session, every terrible night toward the end. She died on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 years ago, with Chuck sitting beside her hospital bed. The grief that followed was suffocating. Chuck kept working because he didn't know what else to do, but the business felt meaningless without Barbara to share it with. His employees were sympathetic but distant. His few remaining friends were busy with their own families, their own grandchildren. Chuck would come home to an empty house every night, heat up a frozen dinner, and sit in front of the television without really watching it. After a year of this hollow existence, Chuck made a decision. He was going to sell everything and start over somewhere new. Somewhere warm, somewhere affordable, somewhere he wouldn't be constantly reminded of what he'd lost. He'd heard about Thailand through a customer, a younger guy who'd spent 6 months traveling through Southeast Asia. The customer had shown Chuck photos on his phone, pristine beaches, elaborate temples, smiling people, and impossibly cheap prices. "You can live like a king on $1,500 a month," the customer said. "Beautiful weather, year-round, friendly locals, and the Thai women? Man, they actually appreciate men, not like American women who just complain all the time." The comment about Thai women stuck in Chuck's mind, though he didn't admit it to himself at first. He wasn't looking for romance. He was 64 years old, overweight, balding, and still grieving his wife. But the idea of being appreciated, of being wanted, of not feeling invisible, that appealed to him more than he cared to acknowledge. Chuck started researching obsessively. He joined expat Facebook groups, watched countless YouTube videos about retiring in Thailand, and read every forum post he could find. He learned about visa requirements, cost of living, healthcare, and the various cities where expats congregated. Pattaya kept coming up, a beach city 2 hours from Bangkok, famous for its nightlife and large foreign population. Some of the warnings in the forums should have given him pause. Stories about bar girls scamming lonely foreigners, about money disappearing, about relationships that ended in financial ruin. But Chuck convinced himself he was different. He was smarter than those guys. He'd run a successful business for decades. He could spot a con. He knew how to protect himself. In November, 2 years after Barbara's death, Chuck sold his plumbing business to a younger competitor for $380,000. He sold the house for another $210,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage. After taxes and expenses, he had approximately $495,000, his entire life's work, reduced to a number in his bank account. Chuck bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok, packed 2 suitcases, and left Cleveland without looking back. When his plane touched down at Suvarnabhumi Airport on a humid evening in late November, Chuck felt something he hadn't felt in years: excitement. The air was thick and warm, the terminal massive and modern, the signs in Thai script looking exotic and mysterious. He took a taxi to Pattaya, watching the Thai countryside transform into urban sprawl, then into the neon-lit chaos of the beach city. Chuck had rented a studio apartment in Soi Buakau, right in the heart of Pattaya's bar district. The rent was 12,000 baht a month, about $360 for a furnished space with air conditioning, a small kitchen, and a balcony overlooking the street. It was perfect for what Chuck needed: affordable, centrally located, and close to everything. His first week in Pattaya was overwhelming. The heat was intense, the traffic insane, the noise constant. Motorbikes weaved through cars with no apparent regard for safety. Street vendors lined the sidewalks selling grilled meat, fresh fruit, and cheap clothing. Bars opened directly onto the street, music blasting, women in short dresses calling out to passing foreigners. It was everything Cleveland wasn't. Chuck spent those first days walking around, eating at local restaurants where a full meal cost less than $5, drinking cheap beer at open-air bars, and marveling at how far his money stretched. He could live comfortably here on $2,000 a month, maybe less. His savings would last decades. But more than the affordability, Chuck noticed the attention. Women smiled at him. Bartenders called him handsome man. Waitresses laughed at his jokes. In Cleveland, Chuck had been invisible, just another overweight, aging man that nobody noticed. Here, people seemed genuinely happy to see him. It was intoxicating. Chuck met Nacha Boonmi on his second week in Pattaya. It was a Friday evening, and Chuck had decided to explore Soi Buakau's bar scene more deliberately. He'd walked past dozens of small beer bars, open-air establishments with a handful of bar stools, pool tables, and Thai women working as hostesses. Most of the bars looked identical, but one caught his attention because it was less crowded, quieter, and the music wasn't deafening. The place was called Lucky 7 Bar. Chuck walked in and took a seat at the bar counter. A young Thai woman immediately approached with a bright smile. "Hello, welcome. What you want drink?" Chuck ordered a Leo beer. The woman popped open the bottle, poured it into a glass with practiced ease, and set it in front of him. "You knew Pattaya?" she asked. "Yeah, been here about 2 weeks, still figuring everything out." "You like?" "So far, yeah. It's different from back home." "Where you from?" "Cleveland, Ohio, in America." Her eyes lit up. "America. Very nice. You retire?" Chuck nodded. "Just sold my business, plumbing contractor." "Wow, you must be very successful, very rich." Chuck chuckled, uncomfortable with the assumption but also flattered. "Not rich, just comfortable." The woman introduced herself as Ice, a nickname, she explained, because her real name Nacha was too hard for foreigners to pronounce. She was 27 years old, petite with long black hair, a sweet smile, and an easy manner that put Chuck at ease immediately. Unlike some of the other bar girls Chuck had encountered, Ice didn't seem pushy or aggressive. She didn't immediately ask him to buy her a drink or try to drag him off somewhere. She just talked to him, asked questions about his life, and seemed genuinely interested in his answers. Chuck found himself staying at Lucky 7 for hours that first night, long after he'd planned to leave. Ice sat with him between serving other customers, and they talked about everything. She asked about his business, what he'd done in Cleveland, why he'd come to Thailand. Chuck told her about Barbara, not everything, but enough. About being married for 42 years, about losing her to cancer, about feeling lost afterward. Ice's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "I'm so sorry. That very sad. You must love her very much." "I did," Chuck said quietly. "She lucky woman. Have husband who love her so much." Ice touched his arm gently. "You good man. I can tell." Something about the way she said it, with those sincere eyes and that soft touch, made Chuck's chest tighten with emotion. He hadn't felt seen, really seen, in so long. Before Chuck left that night, Ice asked for his phone number. "You come back, see me, yes? I like talk you." Chuck gave it to her without hesitation. Over the next 2 weeks, Chuck returned to Lucky 7 almost every evening. Ice always greeted him enthusiastically, as if he were the only customer who mattered. She would sit with him for hours, sometimes neglecting other patrons, and they would talk. She told him about her life growing up in a small village in Isan, Thailand's poorest region, moving to Pattaya to find work, sending money home to support her mother and younger brother. "I not like this work," she said one night, her voice heavy with what seemed like genuine shame. "But my family need help. My brother want go university. Very expensive. I only one can help." Chuck felt a surge of sympathy. Here was this young woman, working in a job she clearly didn't want, sacrificing her own dignity to support her family. It reminded him of the work ethic he'd always valued, doing what needed to be done, even when it was hard. "How much does your brother's school cost?" Chuck asked. Ice hesitated. "Maybe 30,000 baht one semester. I try save," but she trailed off, looking embarrassed. Chuck did the quick math. 30,000 baht was roughly $900. "Nothing, really. I could help with that," he said, "if you need it." Ice's eyes widened. No, I not ask you money. I just tell you my life. I know, but I want to help. If we're going to be friends, I want to help." Ice's eyes filled with tears. She took his hand in both of hers. "You so kind. Thank you, but I not take your money. Not right." Chuck insisted, and eventually Ice accepted, though she made it clear she felt guilty about it. "I pay you back," she promised. "When my brother finished school, I pay back everything." Chuck waved her off. "Don't worry about it. Just consider it a gift." That night, Ice hugged him tightly before he left, pressing her face against his chest. "You best man I ever meet, Chuck. You have good heart." Walking back to his apartment that night, Chuck felt something he hadn't felt since Barbara died. Purpose. He was helping someone. He was making a difference. And Ice appreciated him in a way no one had in years. Call to action. If you're shocked by Chuck's story so far, please subscribe to our channel for more true crime and love scam documentaries from Southeast Asia. These stories are real, devastating, and more common than you might think. By subscribing and sharing, you help protect others from making the same mistakes. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications now. By Chuck's second month in Pattaya, he and Ice were seeing each other almost every day. It started with Ice finishing her shifts early and joining Chuck for late dinners at local Thai restaurants. Then she started coming to his apartment, first for a few hours, then overnight, then most of the week. She brought a small bag of clothes, toiletries, a few personal items. She cooked for him simple Thai dishes that were far better than anything Chuck could make himself. She cleaned his apartment, did his laundry, and greeted him with affection that felt genuine. Chuck knew what this looked like from the outside. He wasn't naive. He'd read the forum posts about bar girls and sponsorship arrangements and relationships that were really just financial transactions. But this felt different. Ice wasn't like that. She didn't constantly ask for money. She seemed genuinely happy to spend time with him. And when she did need help for her brother's school fees, for her mother's medicine, for repairs to her family's house, Chuck offered before she even asked. One evening in early January, about 6 weeks after they'd met, Ice brought up the idea of Chuck meeting her family. "My mother want meet you," she said, her expression serious. "She worry about me. She want make sure you good man." Chuck felt a flutter of nervousness. Meeting the family felt significant, like a relationship milestone. But he was also touched that Ice's mother cared enough to want to meet him. "When?" he asked. "Next week, maybe? We go Isan. Stay 2 day. You want?" Chuck agreed immediately. They took a bus from Pattaya to Udon Thani, a journey of about 8 hours through the Thai countryside. Ice held Chuck's hand the entire time, occasionally resting her head on his shoulder. When they arrived in her village, a collection of wooden houses and rice fields with dirt roads and wandering chickens, Chuck felt like he'd stepped into another world. Ice's family lived in a modest wooden house, raised on stilts, with a covered porch and an outdoor cooking area. Her mother was a small, weathered woman in her 50s, who greeted Chuck with a warm smile and a traditional Thai way. Her younger brother, supposedly 18 and in university, looked shy but polite. There were aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors, all welcoming Chuck with enthusiasm, though almost none spoke English. Ice translated everything. "My mother say you very handsome. She say I lucky girl." Chuck blushed, feeling both embarrassed and pleased. They stayed for 2 days. Chuck paid for a massive feast: roasted chicken, grilled fish, papaya salad, sticky rice, fresh fruit, and cases of beer and whiskey for the village. The total cost was about 12,000 baht, roughly $360. But Chuck didn't mind. He was being accepted into Ice's family, into her community. It felt important, meaningful. On their last evening there, Ice's mother pulled Chuck aside through Ice as translator. She spoke rapidly in Thai, her expression serious. "My mother say, she happy I find good man. She say she can see you take care me." She asked, "You marry Ice?" Chuck froze. Marriage. He hadn't thought that far ahead. It had only been 6 weeks, but looking at Ice, seeing the hope in her eyes, feeling the warmth of this family's acceptance, Chuck felt himself nodding. "Yeah," he said, "I'd like that." Ice threw her arms around him, crying with what seemed like genuine joy. Her mother beamed. The family erupted in celebration. They weren't legally married. Chuck knew the paperwork would be complicated, and he wasn't ready for that level of commitment yet. But in the village, in the eyes of Ice's family, they were engaged. That was enough for now. After the trip to Eisen, Ice officially moved in with Chuck. His studio apartment was too small for both of them, so in February, they upgraded to a 2-bedroom house in a small development on the outskirts of Pattaya. The rent was 28,000 baht a month, about $840, significantly more than the studio, but the space was worth it. The house had a small garden, a covered carport, and felt like an actual home rather than a temporary crash pad. Ice decorated enthusiastically, buying furniture from local markets, hanging curtains, placing Buddhist statues in prominent positions for good luck. Chuck bankrolled everything, watching his savings account steadily decrease, but telling himself it was an investment in their future. Ice also quit working at Lucky 7 Bar, though Chuck continued paying her former boss a monthly fine of 15,000 baht, about $450, because, as Ice explained, she'd broken her contract by leaving early. Chuck didn't question it. He was just happy she was done with that life. But Ice was restless at home. "I not like just sit all day," she said one evening. "I want do something, help make money, help our family." "You don't need to work," Chuck said. "I've got enough for both of us." "But I want," Ice insisted. "I not want be burden. I want be partner." Chuck felt a swell of admiration. She wasn't content to be supported, she wanted to contribute. It was exactly the kind of work ethic Chuck respected. That's when Ice suggested opening a bar. "Small bar, just for expats," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Clean place, good music, friendly, not like other bar. We make good money, I have work I proud of, and you have something do too. We do together." Chuck was hesitant at first. He didn't know anything about running a bar, but Ice was persuasive. She knew the business, knew what customers wanted, knew how to manage staff, and Chuck had to admit, the idea of having a project, a purpose, appealed to him. "How much would it cost?" he asked. Ice did some calculations, consulting with friends who owned bars. "Maybe $150,000 for everything. Lease, renovation, furniture, license, stock, maybe more, maybe less." Chuck felt his stomach clench. 150,000 was a huge chunk of his savings, but Ice assured him it was an investment that would pay for itself within 2 years, maybe sooner, and all the successful expats in Pattaya owned bars or restaurants. It was a proven model. Over the next 2 months, Chuck poured money into making the bar a reality. They found a location on Soi Buakau, a prime spot with good foot traffic. The lease required 6 months up front and a substantial deposit, $68,000 total. Then came renovations, new flooring, a proper bar counter, bathroom upgrades, paint, lighting, sound system, another 45,000. Furniture, glasses, a pool table, televisions, another 23,000. The liquor license and permits, which had to be obtained through connections, Ice had 16,000. By the time Chuck's place opened in late April, Chuck had invested $212,000. The bar was beautiful, modern but comfortable, with good music, cold beer, and a welcoming atmosphere. Ice hired 3 of her friends to work as servers, and Chuck acted as the friendly owner, chatting with customers and making everyone feel at home. The first few weeks were promising. Customers came in steadily, particularly other expats who appreciated the relaxed vibe. Chuck felt proud every time someone complimented the place, every time Ice smiled at him from behind the bar. But there was one problem Chuck tried to ignore. Everything was in Ice's name. The lease, the licenses, the bank account for the business, all legally hers because, as she explained, foreigners couldn't own bars in Thailand without complicated corporate structures that would cost tens of thousands more. But at our bar, Ice assured him, we partners, what mine is yours, we together, yes? Chuck believed her. Why wouldn't he? They were engaged. They'd built this together. She wouldn't betray him. Or so he thought. By July, 6 months after Chuck's place opened, the bar was struggling. Revenue wasn't meeting expenses. Chuck had assumed the place would be packed every night, but Pattaya had hundreds of bars, all competing for the same customers. Some nights Chuck's place was busy. Other nights it was nearly empty. The staff needed to be paid regardless. The rent was due regardless. The liquor needed to be restocked regardless. Chuck was pumping in another $2,000 to $3,000 a month just to keep the doors open, watching his savings continue to evaporate. Ice became increasingly stressed and irritable. She snapped at the staff, argued with Chuck about expenses, and stayed out later and later after the bar closed, supposedly networking with other bar owners to learn how to improve business. One night in early August, Chuck woke up at 3 in the morning and realized Ice wasn't home. He tried calling her. No answer. He texted her. No response. Finally, at 4:30, she came through the door, smelling like cigarette smoke and whiskey. Where were you? Chuck asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Working, Ice said defensively. Talking with other owner about how get more customer. Until 4:30 in the morning? Yes. You not understand how business work in Thailand. Need build relationship. Need talk people. Chuck wanted to believe her, but doubt had begun creeping in. He noticed other changes too. Ice was spending more time on her phone, texting constantly, sometimes laughing at messages she refused to show him. She bought new clothes, expensive designer pieces that seemed far beyond what the bar's struggling finances should allow. When Chuck asked about it, she said they were gifts from her aunt. In September, Ice dropped a bomb. She was pregnant. Chuck felt his world tilt. Pregnant. At 64 years old, he was going to be a father. It was terrifying and miraculous and overwhelming all at once. Are you sure? He asked. Ice showed him a positive pregnancy test. Yes, we have baby. You happy? Chuck didn't know if he was happy, but he knew he was committed. Of course, he said, pulling her close. We'll figure it out. The pregnancy seemed to stabilize their relationship for a few weeks. Ice was softer, more affectionate. Chuck started imagining a future with a child, something he'd given up hoping for decades ago. But then Ice had a miscarriage or so, she said. She came home from the hospital one afternoon in late September, crying, saying she'd lost the baby. Chuck held her while she sobbed, feeling his own grief mixing with relief he didn't want to acknowledge. Looking back later, Chuck would wonder if there ever was a pregnancy at all, but in the moment, he accepted it without question. By October, the bar was hemorrhaging money at an unsustainable rate. Chuck had burned through another $70,000 trying to keep it afloat. His total investment was now over $280,000, and the business showed no signs of becoming profitable. Maybe we should close it, Chuck suggested one evening. Cut our losses. Ice reacted with fury. You want give up? After everything I do? After everything we build? I'm not giving up. You think I stupid? You think I not know how run business? I didn't say that. You come Thailand. You think you know everything. You think you better than Thai people, but you nothing without me. The outburst shocked Chuck. He'd never seen Ice like this, angry, cruel, contemptuous. He tried to apologize, tried to smooth things over, but Ice stormed out and didn't come home that night, or the next night, or the next. Chuck woke up on a Thursday morning in late October to an empty house. Ice hadn't come home in 3 days. Her clothes were gone from the closet. Her toiletries were cleared from the bathroom. The jewelry Chuck had bought her, gold necklaces, bracelets, rings, was missing. Even the small Buddha statue she'd prayed to every morning was gone. Chuck tried calling her. The number rang once, then went to voicemail. He texted her. No response. He called again. This time, a recorded message in Thai played, indicating the number was no longer in service. Panic rising, Chuck drove to Chuck's place. Maybe she was there. Maybe she'd just needed space and had been sleeping at the bar. But when he arrived at 7 in the morning, the metal gate was padlocked. A handwritten sign in Thai hung from the bars. Chuck couldn't read it, so he stopped a passing street vendor and asked for translation. "Closed. Sold," the vendor said in broken English, then walked away. Chuck felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. Sold. The bar was sold. The bar he'd invested $212,000 in. The bar that bore his name above the entrance. He pulled out his phone and called the landlord, a Thai man named Somchai who spoke decent English. "What happened to my bar?" Chuck demanded. "Your bar?" Somchai sounded confused. "Not your bar. Miss Nacha bar. She called me yesterday. Say she closed business. Break lease. She pay penalty. All finished now. What about the equipment? The furniture? Everything inside? She sell to new owner. They open new bar there soon." Chuck felt his legs weaken. "She can't do that. I paid for everything. Maybe you talk her." "Not my problem. Lease finish, contract finish, everything legal." Chuck hung up and drove directly to the police station. The Pattaya police station was a busy, chaotic place. Officers in brown uniforms, processing reports, tourists filing complaints about stolen phones and scooter accidents, the smell of cigarette smoke and strong coffee filling the air. Chuck waited for over an hour before speaking with an English-speaking officer, a middle-aged man named Captain Prazert, who listened to Chuck's story with an expression that shifted from professional interest to barely concealed pity. "Let me understand," Prazert said when Chuck finished. "You invest money in bar in her name. She close bar, take money, disappear, correct?" "Yes." "You have contract? Paper that say you own her?" "No, but you have proof you give her money?" "I have bank transfers, yes." "Transfer to her personal account or business account?" Chuck's stomach sank. "Personal." She said it was easier. Prazert sighed. "Mr. Miller, I tell you honestly, this very difficult case, you give money to girlfriend. Girlfriend own bar. She close bar. Under Thai law, she do nothing wrong. The money you give her legally, it gift. You understand? It wasn't a gift. It was an investment. She told me we were partners, but no contract, no legal partnership, just verbal promise." "What about the house?" "I've been paying rent on the house we live in." "House in whose name?" Chuck hesitated. "Hers. We signed a lease together, but she was the main. Then her responsibility, not yours. So you're saying there's nothing you can do?" Prazert spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "I can make report, but I tell you now, no crime here. This is relationship problem, not police problem." Chuck left the station in a daze. He drove around Pattaya aimlessly for hours, trying to process what had happened. Eventually, he returned to the rental house, the house he'd been paying for, the house that felt like home, and found the landlord waiting outside. "Miss Nacha call me," the landlord said. "She say you move out. She pay penalty for break contract." "This is my house," Chuck protested. "I've been paying rent. Lease in her name. She want you leave. You have 1 week." Chuck stood there in the driveway, staring at the house he'd thought was his, and felt his entire world crumble for the second time in his life. Chuck hired a private investigator named Pichet, recommended by an expat he'd met at a coffee shop. Pichet charged 20,000 baht, about $600 for 3 days of work. What he discovered destroyed whatever hope Chuck had left. Nacha wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Nacha Boonmi, and she had a documented history. Pichet found her social media accounts, ones she'd hidden from Chuck, showing a completely different life. Photos, with multiple foreign men over the years, always the same pattern. Affectionate couple photos, bar openings, renovation projects. Then the men disappeared, replaced by new faces. Pichet tracked down 2 of Nacha's previous boyfriends, a 62-year-old Australian named Trevor and a 58-year-old British man named Colin. Both told nearly identical stories to Chuck's. Met Nacha at a bar, fell in love, invested in businesses, bars, restaurants, a guest house, everything in Nacha's name, then sudden disappearance and financial ruin. Trevor had lost $190,000. Colin had lost $240,000. "She's got it down to a science, mate," Trevor told Chuck over the phone, his Australian accent thick with bitterness. "Targets, lonely, older blokes, plays the struggling girl with the sick family, takes everything, then vanishes. I tried suing her. Lawyer said I had no case. Everything was legally hers. Pichet also discovered something else. The family Chuck had met in Eisen wasn't Natcha's real family. They were actors, friends from a nearby village who played the role for cash. Natcha's real mother lived in Bangkok in a house Natcha had purchased with money from previous scams. Her younger brother didn't exist. The pregnancy had been fake. The miscarriage had been fake. Everything had been fake. Pichet found Natcha's current location. She was in Koh Samui, staying at a luxury resort with a 24-year-old German tourist. Photos showed them on the beach, at expensive restaurants, looking like any other couple on vacation. Chuck stared at the photos Pichet had shown him on a tablet, seeing Natcha Ice smiling in a bikini, her arm around a young blonde man. She looked happy, carefree, unburdened by guilt. "I'm sorry," Pichet said quietly. "I see this many times. Foreign man come Thailand, think he find true love. But some Thai women, they very good at acting. This is business for them." Chuck nodded numbly, unable to speak. Charles Miller now lives in a small one-bedroom apartment in Jomtien, just outside Pattaya's main tourist area. The rent is 8,000 baht a month, about $240 for a basic furnished unit with a balcony overlooking a parking lot. It's all Chuck can afford on his Social Security pension of $1,300 a month. After rent and basic expenses, he has enough for simple meals, electricity, and not much else. He's 65 now, his hair completely gray, his face more lined than it was 18 months ago when he first arrived in Thailand with dreams of a new life. He works part-time at a guest house owned by a British expat named Roger, doing maintenance and cleaning rooms for an extra 10,000 baht a month. It's not the retirement he envisioned. Chuck has lost approximately $287,000, nearly 60% of his life savings. The bar, the house deposits, the car, the family gifts, the monthly support, the pregnancy expenses that were never real, all gone. He has $208,000 left, which sounds like a lot, but isn't when you're 65 years old and have no other income source. He doesn't talk about what happened unless someone asks. Most of the expats in his building know the basic story: another foreigner scammed by a bar girl, another cautionary tale in a city full of them. One evening, Chuck was having a beer at a small local bar when a young American man sat down beside him. The guy was maybe 40, recently arrived, full of enthusiasm about Thailand. "Met this amazing girl yesterday," the American said. "Works at a bar in Swai Bua Khao. Sweetest person I've ever met. Says she wants to quit the bar life, go back to school. I'm thinking of helping her out." Chuck looked at him for a long moment, then said, "Be careful, really careful." "What do you mean?" "Just protect yourself. Don't invest in anything you can't afford to lose. Don't put anything in her name. Don't believe everything she tells you." The American looked offended. "Dude, not every Thai woman is a scammer. Some of them are genuine." "You're right," Chuck said quietly. "Some are, but you won't know which one she is until it's too late." The American shrugged and changed the subject. Chuck didn't push it. What would be the point? He wouldn't have listened either, a year and a half ago. Last week, Chuck saw Natcha. She was walking through Central Festival shopping mall with the same German tourist from the photos Pichet had shown him. She was carrying shopping bags from expensive stores, wearing new jewelry Chuck didn't recognize. She walked right past him without the slightest flicker of recognition, as if he were invisible. Chuck didn't approach her. He just watched her walk away, arm linked with her new victim, and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just emptiness. That night, lying in his small apartment with the fan rotating slowly overhead and the sound of traffic filtering through the window, Chuck thought about what he would say to his younger self if he could go back to that first night at Lucky 7 Bar. He would say, "Walk away." Not because all Thai women are scammers, but because grief makes you vulnerable, loneliness makes you desperate, and there are people who can smell that desperation from across a crowded bar. He would say, "You weren't saving her. She was saving herself at your expense." He would say, "The attention you craved, the appreciation you needed, the purpose you thought you found, none of it was real. It was a performance, and you paid for every scene." But mostly, Chuck would tell himself this: you can't buy love. You can't rescue someone into caring about you. And no matter how much money you spend, no matter how many gifts you give, no matter how many promises you hear, if it's built on financial transactions, it will end in financial ruin. Chuck turns 66 next month. He'll spend the day alone, probably working at the guest house, cleaning rooms and fixing broken air conditioners. It's not the life he imagined when he sold everything in Cleveland and flew to Thailand with dreams of sunshine, beaches, and companionship. But it's the life he has now. Sometimes, late at night when sleep won't come, Chuck pulls out his phone and looks at photos from the bar's opening him standing behind the counter with Ice, both of them smiling. The sign reading Chuck's Place visible in the background. He looks happy in those photos. Proud, full of hope. He deletes them, one by one. There's no point holding on to images of something that never really existed. Chuck has started attending a support group for expats who've been scammed in Thailand. It meets weekly at a coffee shop in Jomtien. There are usually 8 to 10 men there, all with similar stories, bars, restaurants, land deals, businesses that vanished overnight along with the Thai partners who owned them. At first, Chuck found the meetings depressing, listening to other men recount their losses, their shame, their financial devastation. It was like reliving his own nightmare over and over. But gradually, he's come to appreciate them. These men understand. They don't judge. They don't say, "You should have known better," or "How could you be so stupid?" They just listen, because they've been there. Last week, a new member joined a 59-year-old Canadian named Doug, who'd lost $300,000 to a woman he'd planned to marry. Doug broke down crying halfway through telling his story, and Chuck found himself reaching across the table to grip the man's shoulder. "It's not your fault," Chuck said. "You wanted to believe in something good. That's human. She exploited that. The shame is hers, not yours." Doug looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "Does it get easier?" Chuck thought about it honestly. "Not easier, but you learn to carry it differently." That's the truth Chuck has learned in the 14 months since Ice disappeared. The loss doesn't go away. The sense of betrayal doesn't fade. The financial damage is permanent, but you can choose how you let it define you. You can let it destroy you completely, or you can rebuild something smaller but more honest. Chuck has chosen to rebuild. He started writing a blog about his experience, posting it on expat forums and Facebook groups. He doesn't use Ice's real name. He's not trying to get revenge, just trying to warn others. The blog has gotten hundreds of comments, dozens of messages from men thanking him for sharing his story, saying it made them more careful, made them think twice about a relationship they were in. If Chuck's loss can prevent even one other man from making the same mistakes, maybe there's some meaning in it. His relationship with Barbara feels both closer and more distant now. Closer because he understands better how rare real love is, how precious genuine partnership was. Distant because he realizes he spent most of his time in Thailand trying to replace her, trying to fill a Barbara-shaped hole with someone who was playing a role. Barbara deserved better than that. Her memory deserved better than that. Chuck has no plans to date again. At 65, broke and broken, living in a cheap apartment in a foreign country, he's not exactly a catch. And besides, he doesn't trust himself anymore. He thought he was smarter than the other guys. He thought he could spot a con. He was wrong. Once was enough. These days, Chuck finds peace in small things. Morning coffee on his balcony, watching the city wake up, the satisfaction of fixing a broken toilet at the guest house, conversations with other expats who don't want anything from him. The occasional video call with his sister back in Ohio, who stopped asking when he's coming home because they both know the answer is probably never. This is his life now. Simple, solitary, scarred by expensive lessons, but he's still here, still surviving, still warning others. Recently, a journalist from an Expat magazine interviewed Chuck for an article about romance scams in Thailand. The journalist asked him if he regretted moving to Thailand. Chuck thought about it for a long time. "No," he finally said, "I don't regret coming here. This country didn't scam me. One person did. Thailand is just a place. Beautiful, complicated, full of good people and bad people like anywhere else. I regret trusting the wrong person. I regret letting grief cloud my judgment. I regret not protecting myself, but I don't regret trying to start over." The journalist asked one more question. "What's the most important thing you learned?" Chuck didn't hesitate. "I thought I saved her life. I thought I was her hero, rescuing her from a hard situation, giving her a better future. But she didn't need saving. She was never in danger. She was hunting, and I was the prey. The lesson is simple. You can't save someone who's already saved themselves at your expense." That quote became the headline of the article. Chuck received messages from dozens of men who said it resonated with them, that it articulated something they'd felt but couldn't express. Charles Miller turned 66 in 3 weeks. He has no plans to celebrate. He'll probably work his shift at the guest house, have a quiet dinner at a cheap Thai restaurant, maybe have one beer at the local bar where everybody knows his name and nobody asks for money. It's not the retirement he dreamed of when he sold his plumbing business in Cleveland and flew to Thailand with hope in his heart and nearly $500,000 in his bank account. But it's honest, it's real, and nobody's pretending to love him for it. Sometimes, that's enough. If Chuck's story impacted you, please subscribe and share this video widely. Romance scams destroy thousands of lives every year, and they don't just happen in Thailand, they happen everywhere, to people of all ages and backgrounds. The common thread is loneliness, grief, and the very human need to be loved and appreciated. Predators exploit these needs systematically and ruthlessly. By sharing these stories, we protect each other. We break the shame and silence that allows these scams to continue. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and help us spread awareness. Your share might save someone's life savings. Thank you for watching, and remember, real love never comes with a price tag. Stay safe out there.